The late 1960s. Hollywood was a changing landscape. The golden era of the classic Western was fading, and a new, gritty reality was emerging from the desert dust. On one side stood the Duke, John Wayne, the undisputed king of the American frontier, a symbol of traditional values, and a man who believed a hero should always wear a white hat. But on the horizon, a shadow was growing. A stranger with a cigarillo between his teeth, a dirty poncho, and eyes as cold as a winter morning. Clint Eastwood. He wasn't just a new actor, he was a revolution. He brought this spaghetti western to the world, where there were no heroes, only survivors. John Wayne didn't just dislike Eastwood's style, he despised it. To Wayne, these new films were an insult to the history of the West. He saw Eastwood's characters as amoral killers who lacked the dignity of the pioneers. Little did he know, this friction was about to ignite one of the most legendary rivalries in cinema history. A rivalry that would culminate in a single, scathing letter that changed everything. In 1973, Clint Eastwood sent a script to John Wayne. It was for a film titled High Plains Drifter. Eastwood, out of respect, wanted the legend himself to co-star with him. But when Wayne finished reading it, he didn't just say no. He was furious. Wayne sat down and wrote a scathing letter to Eastwood. He told him that the film was an insult to the American people. He hated how the townspeople were portrayed as cowards. To Wayne, the West was a place of honor, not the cynical, dark world Eastwood was creating. Clint didn't argue. He simply tossed the letter aside, realizing that the old guard would never understand the new world. The bridge between the two legends had officially burned. To understand the depth of this rivalry, we must look beyond the silver screen and into the very soul of the American West. John Wayne wasn't just playing a character. He was the American frontier. For 30 years, he had been the face of manifest destiny. In his world, the lines were drawn clearly in the sand. There was right and there was wrong. But in the mid-1960s, a new wave of cinema arrived from Europe, led by Sergio Leone and a young American actor who had been a bit player on TV's Rawhide. Clint Eastwood brought something to the table that Wayne couldn't comprehend: ambiguity. When Eastwood's man with no name walked into a saloon, he wasn't there to save the girl or protect the town. He was there for the money. He was dirty, he was cynical, and he shot people in the back if it meant surviving. To John Wayne, this wasn't just a new style of filmmaking, it was a betrayal. Wayne once famously remarked that these new westerns were bloody, violent, and lacked the pioneer's spirit. He felt that Eastwood was destroying the legend he had spent his entire life building. The industry was watching. The old Hollywood studios were crumbling, and the new Hollywood was rising. While Wayne was filming The Green Berets, trying to uphold traditional patriotism, Eastwood was in Spain and Italy, creating a subgenre that would eventually swallow the classic Western whole. The tension wasn't just professional, it was personal. Wayne felt that Eastwood's characters were immoral killers. He didn't see the art in it. He saw a decline in American culture. On the other hand, Eastwood represented the cynical reality of a post-Vietnam America. People didn't believe in the perfect hero anymore. They wanted someone who reflected the world they saw on the nightly news: broken, dusty, and gray. This ideological war is what made their rivalry the most fascinating silent conflict in cinema history. They were two ships passing in the night, one heading toward a sunset of nostalgia, and the other sailing into a dark, uncertain future. By the mid-1970s, the world had changed beyond recognition for John Wayne. The studio system he helped build was gone, and the audiences were no longer looking for the black and white morality of his youth. But more importantly, the Duke was fighting a silent war within his own body. Cancer, which he famously called the Big C, was slowly closing in. In 1976, Wayne agreed to star in a film titled The Shootist. It would be his final performance, and arguably, his most honest. He played J.B. Brooks, an aging gunfighter dying of cancer, looking for a way to exit the world with dignity. The parallels between the character and the actor were heartbreakingly clear. On the set, Wayne was weak, often needing oxygen between takes, yet he refused to let his legacy fade without one last stand. What's fascinating about The Shootist is that it felt more like a Clint Eastwood film than a traditional John Wayne Western. It was somber, it was reflective, and it dealt with the consequences of a life of violence. For decades, Wayne had criticized Eastwood for showing the dark side of the West, but in his final hour, he embraced that same darkness. He showed us a hero who was tired, a hero who was vulnerable, and a hero who knew that the world no longer had a place for men like him. While Wayne was filming his goodbye, Eastwood was reaching the peak of his power with the outlaw Josie Wales. The torch was being passed, even if Wayne didn't want to hand it over. There's a quiet tragedy in the fact that these two men, who defined the American cowboy for two different generations, never once sat across from each other on a movie set. They were like two planets orbiting the same sun, but always on opposite sides. During the filming of The Shootist, there was a rumor that Eastwood sent a message of respect to Wayne's camp. Whether it's true or not, the film stands as a silent bridge between them. Wayne's final cinematic walk into the sunset wasn't into a glorious, romanticized horizon, but into a realistic, painful end, the very kind of realism he had spent years fighting against. It was as if, at the very end of his journey, the Duke finally understood why the world needed the man with no name. He realized that to be a true legend, you must eventually acknowledge the shadows as well as the light. June 11th, 1979. The lights went out for the last time. John Wayne, the man who had starred in over 170 films and defined the American spirit for half a century, passed away. The world mourned a legend, but in the hills of Hollywood, a new era had already taken firm root. The throne was no longer empty. Clint Eastwood had claimed it, but he did so with a quiet, somber respect that many didn't expect. For years, the media tried to fuel the fire of their rivalry. They wanted a public feud, a headline-grabbing fight. But Eastwood, even in the face of Wayne's earlier criticisms, chose the high road. He once said in an interview, "There will never be another Duke. You don't replace a man like that. You just try to find your own path." This was the moment the world realized that their rivalry wasn't about hate. It was about the painful evolution of art. As the 1980s and 90s rolled in, Eastwood did something remarkable. He took the Western genre, which Wayne had perfected and then nearly died with, and he gave it a second life. When Eastwood directed and starred in Unforgiven in 1992, he dedicated the film to his mentors, Sergio Leone and Don Siegel. But critics and fans saw a hidden tribute to Wayne as well. Unforgiven was the ultimate bridge. It was a film that combined the grit of the new world with the heavy, moral consequences of the old one. Today, when we look back at the history of cinema, we don't see Wayne and Eastwood as enemies. We see them as the two pillars of the American frontier. Wayne gave us the dream, the idea that a man could be pure, that justice was simple, and that the good guy always won. Eastwood gave us the reality, that life is messy, that justice is earned in blood, and that sometimes the hero is just the last man standing. The legend of the Duke and the legacy of the stranger now live side by side in the Hall of Fame. They represent the duality of the human spirit, our desire for heroism and our struggle with our own shadows. As the sun sets on the era of the classic Western, their silhouettes remain etched against the horizon. Two giants, two visions, one unforgettable story. The frontier may be gone, but as long as there is a camera and a dusty trail, the spirits of John Wayne and Clint Eastwood will continue to ride on. And perhaps, somewhere in that great cinematic beyond, the Duke has finally shared a drink with the man with no name, realizing that they were both just trying to tell the same story in a different light.